in 2026, there is this completely wild statistic out there.
Oh, yeah. The survival rates.
Yeah, exactly. It says that tiny, bootstrapped AI startups, like we're talking teams operating out of garages with zero venture backing, they actually have a 3 times higher chance of turning a profit in their first 36 months.
Yeah. Compared to their heavily funded peers.
Yeah, compared to competitors sitting on, $100 billion war chest.
Yeah.
Which, on paper, makes absolutely no sense.
None at all. Not if you look at the headlines, anyway.
Right. If you just read the tech blogs, you'd think the AI hype bubble popping over this last year just completely ruined the market.
Well, it definitely ruined it for the tourists.
Exactly. And that's exactly what we're unpacking in today's deep dive. Because the reality is the deflation of that bubble didn't destroy the playing field. It cleared it.
It did.
It reminds me so much of the aftermath of the dot-com crash. When the tourists and the hype chasers finally pack up and go home, the real builders get to work. And if you're trying to build something real right now or invest wisely, this is the greatest window of opportunity you could possibly ask for.
It really is. I mean, it's the ultimate shift from spectacle to substance.
Substance, yeah.
And you really see this in the macro numbers, which are honestly a bit of a paradox at the moment.
How so?
Well, global AI spending hasn't slowed down at all. I mean, it's actively climbing toward like $2.5 trillion.
Wow. $2.5 trillion.
Right. So the capital is still aggressively deploying, but the patience for what that capital actually funds, that has completely vanished.
Okay, so the tolerance for just messing around is gone.
Exactly. The market is entirely exhausted by unchecked experimentation. Over the last few years, the industry was just obsessed with funding these massive, generalized, generative AI initiatives.
The everything models.
Yeah, and they were essentially just breathtakingly expensive parlor tricks.
Like demos that looked absolutely incredible in a keynote presentation.
Oh, the keynotes were amazing.
But then they completely fell apart when a business actually tried to use them to, make money or save time.
Precisely. They struggled to show literally any measurable return on investment. So what we're living through right now, what a lot of people are calling this AI reckoning, it's really just capital finally demanding real unit economics.
Right.
Investors and enterprise buyers, they're just refusing to fund cool demos with this vague hope that a business model will magically materialize later.
Which brings us perfectly to the core of today's deep dive.
Yeah.
We are looking at this fascinating document titled 2026, The Best Time.
Yes, a really great piece of analysis.
It is, and it argues that this reckoning is actually a massive opportunity for pragmatic builders.
Yeah.
But, okay, let's unpack this because I want to go back at that opening stat. I'm kind of stuck on it.
The profitability odds.
Yeah. I need to understand the mechanics here. How does a 5-person team with absolutely no funding have 3 times the profitability odds of a venture-backed giant?
It seems counterintuitive.
Completely. I mean, if I'm a startup, shouldn't a massive pile of venture capital guarantee that I can out-engineer and out-market the tiny bootstrapped guys?
You would naturally assume that, right? That a larger war chest just automatically buys market dominance. But in a maturing technology landscape like we have now, massive funding often acts as a straitjacket.
A straitjacket. Okay, why?
Look at the heavily funded peers. When you take $100 million, you are implicitly promising your investors an ocean-sized return.
You have to become a unicorn.
Exactly. You have to be a multi-billion-dollar company. So to do that, these companies feel this immense pressure to build massive, generalized foundational models. They try to be the everything app for every possible user.
So they're burning incredible amounts of cash on general compute, right?
Yeah.
Just processing queries that might range from writing a poem to coding a website with no real focus.
Yes. And honestly, worse than the compute costs, they spend an absolute fortune on marketing to acquire customers who are mostly just curious.
Ah, the tourists again.
Right. They're just testing the waters. So the heavily funded company's customer acquisition costs, their CAC, just goes through the roof.
And I bet they don't stick around.
They don't. Their churn is astronomical. Because a generalized product is rarely the perfect solution for a specific, painful business problem.
Okay, that makes sense.
Now, contrast the physics of that business model with a bootstrap team.
They definitely don't have the luxury of paying for a user's idle curiosity.
Not at all.
Like if a bootstrap team pays for server compute, they need a customer paying them back for it that exact same day or the lights go out.
Exactly. And that survival mechanism completely changes the architecture of what they build. Out of sheer necessity, bootstrap teams keep their burn rates incredibly low.
So they just abandon generalized experimentation entirely.
Totally. They find one highly specific, deeply painful problem for one specific type of customer, and they build a targeted tool that solves it so well that the customer is willing to pay on day one. By ignoring the hype and focusing purely on the balance sheet, they maintain this sustainable growth. They aren't trying to boil the ocean, to use a very tired cliche. They are just trying to boil a single cup of water exceptionally well.
And the barrier to doing that has just plummeted, right? I mean, the document highlights how the physical cost of experimentation has fundamentally changed.
Oh, it's night and day compared to even a couple of years
Yeah.
ago.
Because, yeah, a few years ago, just getting a prototype AI model up and running required an eye-watering cloud budget.
Right. You needed specialized hardware, massive server instances.
But today, open source models have matured so much that you don't need to rent out a supercomputer anymore.
No, the foundational architecture is largely commoditized now. We have these incredibly capable open source models that literally anyone can download for free.
It's wild.
It is. So the challenge is no longer inventing the AI, the challenge is tuning it. And that leads to a profound shift in the talent market.
Which the document talks about a lot.
Yeah, the reckoning has completely flipped the hiring dynamic in the founder's favor.
We have to explore that because I remember during the peak of the hype cycle, there was this fierce, almost irrational competition for what the industry called frontier model researchers.
Oh, the bidding wars were insane.
Right, like these PhDs who were inventing entirely new architectures. Every tech company on Earth was throwing millions of dollars at these academics, thinking they needed a team of absolute pioneers just to participate in the new economy.
But then the realization hit that unless you are one of the 3 largest tech companies in the world, you just do not need to train a massive foundational model from scratch.
Just a waste of money.
A huge waste. So the market now is incredibly rich with engineers who are skilled in applied AI rather than theoretical AI.
Okay, so what do they actually do day to day?
They specialize in workflow integration, fine-tuning existing models on specific company data, and building highly reliable data pipelines.
It reminds me of the evolution of motorsport, actually.
Oh, how so?
Well, in the very early days, you only wanted engineers who could invent a radically new type of engine from scratch because the tech was new.
Right, right.
But once the internal combustion engine is a known quantity, which AI kind of is now, what an enterprise actually needs to make money is a master mechanic.
I like that.
Someone who knows how to seamlessly bolt that existing engine onto their current tractor so they can plow the field 10 times faster without the whole thing exploding.
That is a phenomenal way to conceptualize it.
Yeah.
Enterprises do not want to buy theoretical engines anymore. They want the tractor to go faster today.
Today, exactly.
They are moving out of the phase where AI was, a fun sandbox project for the innovation team and into a phase where AI has to run actual mission-critical production systems.
Yeah, the stakes are higher.
Much higher.
Yeah.
They need engineers who understand how to make a new AI model talk to a 20-year-old legacy database without hallucinating and breaking everything.
And if that's what enterprises want, that naturally dictates how the money flows at the top level. The source notes that M&A mergers and acquisitions is incredibly robust in 2026.
It's practically booming.
Right. Massive legacy companies buying up smaller tech companies. Because these Fortune 500 companies have realized they're just terrible at building this stuff internally.
They really are. They're notoriously slow at internal innovation, so strategic buyers are actively hunting. But the criteria for an acquisition have changed entirely.
It's not about the hype anymore.
Exactly. They are no longer buying a team of researchers just because they have a cool idea and a lot of potential. They are hunting for revenue-generating, ROI-proven assets. They are buying proven workflows.
Real business.
Real businesses. If a small AI-native company has spent 6 months building a flawless integration that, say, automates logistics routing using an open source model, a legacy logistics giant will just buy them outright.
Right.
Those AI-native teams are compressing what used to be years of traditional corporate scale into mere months.
Okay, so if I'm listening to this and I'm a solo founder, or maybe I'm trying to evaluate an investment in one of these startups, I can't just run on good vibes and cheap compute.
No, definitely not.
I need a mathematical framework to actually survive. And our source outlines a very strict 4-tactic playbook for executing in this 2026 environment.
Yes, and it's ruthless.
It really is. It starts with the unit economics keeping these companies alive. Break down tactic 1 for us.
So tactic 1 is the foundation. Bootstrap ruthlessly by focusing on vertical, domain-specific problems. We touched on this, but it really requires finding problems where the outcome is immediately measurable.
Like day one measurable.
Exactly. The source highlights a couple of fascinating examples. One is optimizing supply chains for cold storage units.
Okay.
Another is building automated compliance agents specifically tailored for Indian financial regulators.
Which are profoundly unsexy problems. I mean, no one in Hollywood is making a thriller about cold storage optimization.
No, definitely not box office material.
But from a business perspective, if a shipping container full of pharmaceuticals gets 3 degrees too warm for 20 minutes, a company loses millions of dollars.
Millions. It's a deeply painful, incredibly expensive problem.
Right.
And solving that pain allows you to achieve tactic 2, which is an absolute obsession with unit economics from the very first day.
The strict math.
The strict math. In 2026, boards and investors are looking at the actual bottom line before the accountants get clever with taxes or interest. The days of growth at all costs are completely dead.
Thank goodness for that.
Right. So the playbook demands a strict 3-to-1 ratio on the lifetime value of a customer versus what it costs to acquire them.
An LTV to CAC of 3 to 1.
Yes. And crucially, it demands a payback period of 12 months or less.
Okay, I have to challenge that 12-month payback period. Because that seems entirely divorced from reality.
It is fast.
It's insanely fast. Enterprise software sales cycles alone often take 9 to 12 months just to get through legal and procurement. Add in the time it takes to deploy AI, which is notoriously finicky, hardware breaks, clients churn. How on earth is a tiny startup getting a full return on their investment in under a year?
It is an incredibly aggressive target, and you are right that for traditional enterprise software, it's nearly impossible.
Right.
But that friction is exactly why Tactic 2 only works if you strictly follow Tactic 1.
Okay, connect the dots for me.
If you are selling a vague AI productivity assistant to a massive corporation, yes, the sales cycle takes a year, the integration takes another year, and measuring the actual financial return is basically impossible.
Because how do you improve the assistant actually save the marketing team money? It's just too abstract.
Exactly. But let's look at that cold storage example again. You walk into a logistics facility and say, we have a specialized AI agent. It integrates with your existing cooling sensors. By predicting thermodynamic shifts based on local weather and facility foot traffic, it will reduce your energy costs by 20% this month and ensure 0 regulatory compliance failures.
Oh, wow.
The customer can measure that energy saving on their very next utility bill. The return is instant.
That is a massive difference.
It bypasses the whole 9-month procurement cycle because the operations manager can often just authorize it right out of their immediate discretionary budget.
So the strict math forces you to build a sharper weapon. You simply cannot afford to build something vague if you need your money back in 12 months.
Precisely.
But having a hyper-specific software solution is kind of useless if the infrastructure costs of running it just eat all your margins. Like, how do you bypass the massive monthly bills from the big cloud providers?
And that brings us to Tactic 3, leverage edge and open source infrastructure.
This is huge.
It might be the most critical technological shift in the 2026 playbook. You just stop sending all your customers' data up to a massive cloud provider for processing.
You do it locally.
Instead, you run the AI model locally, right there on the device, on the edge of the network.
Let's get into the mechanics of that, because honestly, it sounds a little like magic to say you're running a massive artificial intelligence on a local device.
Yeah.
How does a giant large language model get shrunk down to fit on a piece of local hardware?
It comes down to a process called quantization and extreme pruning.
Quantization.
Yeah. Think about it. You don't need a model with 1 trillion parameters that knows how to write a sonnet in French if its only job is to listen to the acoustic vibrations of an industrial lathe.
That makes total sense. It doesn't need to be a polymath.
Right. Engineers take an open source model and they just strip away everything that isn't essential for that one specific task.
Yeah.
They compress the mathematical weights of the model so it requires a fraction of the memory and processing power.
Meaning you can run it on a cheap, off-the-shelf microchip instead of a massive server farm in Virginia.
Exactly.
And beyond just saving on cloud costs, that localized processing acts as a massive competitive moat. The source specifically uses India as the perfect testing ground for this. Why is that geography so crucial to understanding this trend?
India is really the ultimate crucible for cost-sensitive, high-scale enterprise technology.
Right.
It's a massive, rapidly industrializing market where enterprises are incredibly sensitive to recurring cloud costs. Furthermore, there are strict and growing concerns around data sovereignty.
So they don't want their data leaving the building.
Large Indian enterprises and government agencies absolutely do not want their sensitive operational data leaving their facilities, let alone leaving the country to be processed on a server in California.
So if you can walk into an Indian manufacturing plant and say, our AI analyzes your highly sensitive production data in real time, but that data physically never leaves this building, and you will never receive a monthly cloud processing bill from us, you basically win that contract over a cloud-dependent competitor every single time.
You win the contract, and your margins are highly protected because your ongoing compute costs are basically zero.
Because the client is paying for the electricity.
The client provides the electricity to run the box, which perfectly sets up the final step in the playbook, Tactic 4, designed for acquisition or rapid scale.
Right, the end game.
The goal here is to build these modular, embeddable solutions that larger platforms can simply snap up.
And the source provides this incredible real-world case study that really ties all of this together. The Edge AI predictive maintenance and anomaly detector. Let's break down the physical reality of what this actually is.
Yeah, it is a full hardware and software solution. A solo founder or a tiny team can assemble this physical device for under 10,000 rupees.
Which is roughly about 120 US dollars.
Right, incredibly cheap. They deploy it directly into local, small to medium enterprise workshops. It's literally a small plastic box with sensors that they physically mount onto industrial machinery.
And it just listens.
It just listens.
It uses that quantized edge AI we talked about to process the acoustic and vibratory data of the machine locally. It learns the baseline heartbeat of that specific machine, and the moment it detects an anomaly, like a bearing starting to wear out or a belt slipping, it alerts the workshop manager before the machine actually breaks.
And the business model around this is brilliant. They sell the hardware kit for anywhere from 8,000 to 15,000 rupees.
So they immediately recoup their hardware costs.
Instantly.
Right.
And then they charge a modest monthly monitoring fee.
It's just an incredible evolution of the business model. You know, we've all heard that exhausted tech metaphor, that in a gold rush, the people who make the most money are the ones selling the picks and shovels.
Right, the classic trope.
But this isn't just selling a dumb tool. This is more like inventing a highly specialized pacemaker for industrial machinery.
Ooh, a pacemaker.
Yeah, it doesn't need to connect to a massive brain in the cloud to know when a heart is skipping a beat. It makes the life-saving decision right there in the chest.
The pacemaker analogy is spot on because of the autonomy it provides. And think about the M&A endgame here. Why does a giant industrial Internet of Things conglomerate want to buy this tiny startup?
Because they've proven it works.
Because the startup figured out the hardest part, the proven localized workflow.
Right. If the startup had to manually send an engineer to install every single $120 box, their labor costs would completely destroy their margins. They could never scale it globally themselves.
Exactly why the modular design is Tactic 4. The startup designed the software and hardware to be entirely self-contained and plug and play. They prove the unit economics are solid from day one.
They've de-risked the whole thing.
Totally de-risked. They generate immediate recurring revenue from just a handful of local installations. So a massive multinational conglomerate looks at that and says, we already have salespeople in 10,000 factories globally. We just acquire this startup, slap our logo on their plastic box, and push it through our existing distribution channels.
That's a no-brainer for the buyer.
They are paying a massive premium to acquire that risk-free, proven capability.
It completely shifts your perspective on what a successful AI company actually looks like. It's not a shiny robot in a sleek laboratory. It's a $100 plastic box listening to a dusty lathe in a local workshop.
That is the reality of 2026.
So let's bring this all together. What does this actually mean for you listening to this right now? The core message we've unpacked today is that 2026 is not an AI winter. It is the ideal launch window.
Absolutely. The era of unchecked hype where you could raise $1 billion on a slide deck and a cool theoretical demo, that's over.
Thank God.
But the conditions for pragmatic builders have genuinely never been better. The structural costs of experimenting and deploying have absolutely plummeted.
And the talent pool has shifted.
Right, from theoretical academic researchers to practical applied integrators. And the capital is actively flowing, but it's flowing exclusively toward companies that can prove real, measurable impact on day one.
If you can execute with absolute discipline if you can focus strictly on those unit economics, leverage local edge infrastructure to kill your cloud costs, and solve a deeply painful vertical problem, you are positioned to define the next decade of this technology.
It just requires applying a very strict filter to everything you see in the market moving forward.
Yeah. Whether you are prepping for a boardroom meeting tomorrow, exploring a new startup investment, or just trying to navigate this chaotic tech landscape, apply this spectacle versus substance lens.
It changes everything.
It will completely change how you evaluate every new piece of software or headline you encounter. You will stop asking, wow, what can this AI do? And you will instantly start asking, okay, but who is actively paying for this today, and exactly how many dollars is it saving them?
It is quite literally the only metric that matters in the post-hype era.
It really is.
Yeah.
And we want to leave you with one final thought to mull over as you go about the rest of your day.
Yeah, this is a fun one.
Our source highlighted that massive, life-changing success in 2026 is currently found in solving hyperlocal, deeply unsexy problems. We talked about local workshop, predictive maintenance, cold storage, energy flow, regulatory compliance.
Just boring stuff.
The boring stuff. The true future of AI isn't some massive, all-knowing cloud brain. It is a million tiny, highly specialized local models running silently in the background of local hardware. So, think about your own day-to-day work life in whatever industry you are in. What entirely manual, boring, deeply unsexy task that everyone hates doing is exactly the kind of hyper-specific problem a pragmatic 2026 AI builder is about to turn into a highly profitable empire.
It's out there.
Because the tourists have finally gone home. The real builders are out there right now, and they are actively looking for precisely that kind of problem to solve.